Let me ask you something. What would you do if you found out your wife wasn't just cheating, she was planning your downfall like a business deal? I'm Rhett Coleman, 52, and 2 years ago, in early 2023, I opened a journal that turned my entire life inside out. People online call me the villain, and hell, maybe I am, but they don't know what I saw written in her own handwriting. This wasn't an affair. It was a blueprint. A step-by-step manual to financially gut me while smiling across the dinner table. If you're a man, especially over 30, you need to hear this. And before you judge me, subscribe, stick around, and tell me in the comments. What would you have done? Let me back up for a second. I'm 52 now. Natalie's 50. We met back in 2007 at some charity gala in Atlanta. I was the real estate guy in an overpriced suit. She was the event girl with a headset and a clipboard, running around putting out fires with a smile on her face. 1 year later, we were married. It felt simple, right? Like I'd finally found someone who could run beside me, not behind me. We bought a place in the suburbs outside Atlanta. Brick front, 2-car garage, quiet street with kids' bikes in the driveway, just not ours. We tried for kids, doctors, treatments, hope, disappointment, repeat. At some point, that silent ache just became part of the house. We made peace with it. At least that's what I thought. Money was good. Around $380 a year between us. Nice vacations, nice cars, retirement accounts looking solid. From the outside, it was the picture everyone posts on Facebook. Inside my head, the story was simple. We'd been through some stuff. We'd adjusted. We were a team. I looked at our life and told myself one thing, over and over. I thought we were solid. Our life looked like 100 other middle-class marriages in any American suburb. Saturday mornings at Costco, pushing an overflowing cart and pretending the samples were lunch. Quick runs to Target because we were just grabbing one thing and somehow walking out $100 lighter. Weeknights were Netflix on the couch, DoorDash containers on the coffee table, both of us half working on our laptops while a show played in the background. She was the polished director of corporate events, flights, hotels, conferences, lanyards piling up on the kitchen counter. I was the senior partner grinding through deals, zoning codes, investor calls. 2 careers running parallel, meeting in the same bed at night, tired but comfortable. We didn't fight much. We didn't talk much either. Just functioned. Paid the bills, sent memes, kissed in passing. I told myself that was what long-term marriage looked like after 40. Less fireworks, more routine. There were little things, extra trips, new outfits for work dinners, her phone flipped face down more often. I noticed. Then I shoved it down. Because it was easier to believe the story I'd been telling myself for years. Our life was stable. Only later did I realize. Stable was just what I saw. Then came the little tradition that blew my whole life open. Every few months, usually on a Saturday, I'd take Natalie's SUV and deep clean it for her. That thing was a rolling landfill. Starbucks cups in the door, crumpled receipts, half-dead pens, old conference badges and lanyards hanging off the gear shift. I'd grab her keys and say, "I'm gonna go degrossify your car before it walks away on its own." She'd laugh, kiss me on the cheek, throw out a "you're so thoughtful," and go back to her laptop. That was our rhythm. Me doing small, quiet things. Her acting like she noticed. March 2023, it felt like any other run. Hoodie, ball cap, her white SUV, the self-serve car wash off the highway. I vacuumed the mats, pushed the passenger seat all the way back, started digging under it for loose change and trash. My hand hit something solid, wedged deep in the track. I pulled it out. A small black leather journal. No logo, no label. Heavy for its size. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment the marriage was already over. I remember just sitting there in the driver's seat, vacuum still humming outside, turning that journal over in my hands. It looked expensive, personal, the kind of thing you buy for thoughts that matter. I opened it. First line on the page, "He suspects nothing." Second line, "If I play this right, I'll be free and set for life in a year or less." It felt like somebody had driven a fist straight into my chest. My hands went cold. My fingers actually shook on the paper. For a split second, my brain tried to save me. Maybe it's fiction. Maybe she's writing some kind of story. But then I kept reading. Dates I recognized, cities I'd traveled to, my age, my income, my schedule. Little details only we would know, written in her neat, careful handwriting, page after page. No characters, no plot, no chapter one, just us, just me. My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it over the vacuum. This wasn't some creative exercise. This was my life, dismantled in ink. And my stomach just dropped. Sitting there in that car, I kept turning pages, hoping it would somehow get less insane. It didn't. She had dates lined up, little bullets with months and years. Next to them, notes like, good time to file, judge likely sympathetic, maximize settlement if he's mid-project. She'd written out my work schedule, what seasons I was busiest, when my stress was highest, which deals would be closing. There were financial notes too, rough numbers of what I made, what our assets were worth, how much she should push for. She literally used words like leverage, maximize, best narrative. She even outlined how to talk about me. Emotionally absent. Married to his work. Checked out for years. A full script to turn me into the cold, distant husband she'd finally found the courage to leave. None of it matched the life I thought we were living, but on paper it read like a perfect victim story. That was the part that really twisted the knife. She wasn't just sneaking around, she was positioning. It wasn't a rough patch or a lapse in judgment. It was strategy, deliberate and cold. It was predatory. I kept digging because at that point I almost wanted it to be so bad my brain would finally stop trying to defend her. That's when I started seeing his name over and over. Chase, 41, worked at her company, worked closely on key projects. There were entries about hotel bars after conferences, late-night strategy sessions, inside jokes I'd never heard before. Then one line that just burned itself into my head. The age gap makes me feel alive again. They'd been at it for almost 2 years. Trips I thought were work. Nights I thought she was exhausted. Days I was out chasing deals while she was out chasing him. But here's the thing. She didn't write about being in love with him. Not once. She called him good enough for now. Called him a bridge out of this marriage. Wrote that she wasn't planning a long-term future with him. Chase wasn't the endgame. Just a placeholder. A distraction while she designed her financial escape. That's when it hit me. Love had nothing to do with it. This was about leverage. Money and advantage were. And something in me started to go very, very cold. Here's the part where most guys expect fireworks. Screaming, plates flying, bags packed. That didn't happen. Sitting there with that journal, I realized something. If I exploded, I'd be walking straight into the story she'd already written for me. The angry, unstable husband. The man who proved her right. So I shut it down. I went cold. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of every single page, front to back, every sick little line about narrative and maximize. I made sure the lighting was clear, dates visible, handwriting obvious. Then I slid the journal right back where I found it, under the passenger seat, like it had never been touched. On the way home, I stopped and bought her usual vanilla latte. Walked in the front door like it was any other day. She smiled, kissed me, said, "You're too good to me, you know that?" I just smiled back, sat down at the table, ate dinner, made small talk about work and traffic and nothing. On the outside, I was the same man I'd been that morning. On the inside, something had snapped into place. That night, I didn't confront her. That night, I went to war. First thing Monday morning, I did what she never expected. I skipped the drama and went straight to a shark. Not our family attorney, not someone who knew us socially. I found a divorce lawyer downtown with a reputation. The guy people whisper about when they say, if your ex hates you, he probably represented the other side. His office was one of those glass corners overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Cold, clean, no nonsense. I sat there with my phone on the table, that folder of journal photos open. He scrolled. Didn't say much at first. Then he leaned back, let out a low whistle. "Rhett, this is the nuclear option," he said. "You sure you want to push this button?" I thought about her entries. He suspects nothing. Set for life. Bridge out of this marriage. I thought about 16 years. about every late night I'd worked to build the life she was mapping out like a payout. "Yeah," I said, "I'm sure." So we laid it out. A 5-week plan, private investigator, forensic accountant, asset protection, timeline building, no screaming, no begging, no scenes. If she wanted to play this like a business move, fine. I'd play it smart. I'd press the button she never thought I'd find. The private investigator wasn't there to catch her. I already knew she was cheating. What I needed was something colder than emotion, a timeline that either proved or disproved every line in that journal. So this guy gets to work. Quiet, older, the type who's seen too much. He starts matching her life to her own words. Business trips to Dallas, Chicago, Orlando, calendar entries for client dinners, late nights at the office. He pulled phone logs, GPS pings, hotel loyalty records, bar receipts. He'd send my attorney photos, Natalie walking into a hotel with Chase, time-stamped, on the exact dates she wrote about strategy sessions and late-night debriefs. He wasn't trying to catch them in bed. He was doing something worse for her, proving she'd documented the truth. Week after week, his reports came in. My lawyer laid them side by side with screenshots of the journal. Date, time, city, hotel, entry, page, handwriting, everything lined up. By the time he was done, that little black notebook wasn't just some ugly confession. It was a roadmap. And now we had the coordinates to match. The PI gave us the where and when. Next, we went after the money. My attorney brought in a forensic accountant. Not some kid with Excel, a guy who'd spent his career untangling financial lies in divorces and fraud cases. Quiet, polite, absolutely ruthless with numbers. We handed him years of bank statements, joint checking, savings, investment accounts, credit cards. He started circling things. Transfers that didn't fit normal patterns. $800 here, $400 there, $2,600 another month. Nothing huge on its own, but across about 18 months, it added up. Piece by piece, he built a separate column, money that left us and went quietly to her. When he was done, he slid the total across the table, $47,000. Then my attorney pulled up a photo from the journal, one small line in her handwriting. Side fund in case things go sideways. That's what really hit me. She hadn't just cheated. She'd been skimming our life, drip by drip, to build herself an escape account. She wasn't trapped. She was preparing. She didn't just plan to leave. She built a runway to leave, and fueled it with my money. Once we saw that 47 grand had quietly walked out of our life, my mindset shifted for good. This wasn't, maybe I'll forgive her territory anymore. This was protect what's mine. My attorney sat me down and said, "Rhett, feelings don't win court. Paper does." So we went to work. We locked down my equity in the firm, restructured what needed to be restructured so she couldn't stroll in and claim half of something she never built. We pulled every mortgage statement, every insurance payment, every utility bill, every damn property tax receipt. We stacked proof of who actually carried the weight, who paid what, who covered the slow months. On top of that, we documented all the ways I'd stepped up so she could climb, times I took on more at home so she could travel, big events I rearranged my life around so she could shine. It wasn't about pity, it was about record. By the time we were done, my lawyer's office looked like a filing cabinet had exploded. Binders, folders, spreadsheets. It wasn't just defense anymore, it was a wall of facts, and she had no idea it even existed. There was still one piece missing, the other life she was casually burning. If Natalie had a bridge, that bridge had a wife. And whether I liked it or not, she was in this story too. Finding her wasn't hard. Chase wasn't exactly careful online. His Facebook was wide open. Family photos, date nights, kids' birthday parties in the backyard. There she was in the tags, Melissa, smiling next to him. 2 kids, maybe 9 and 11, blowing out candles. I stared at those pictures for a long minute, feeling that sick mix of anger and pity. Then I sent her a message. "Hi Melissa, my name is Rhett. I think we need to talk about our spouses." We met at a Starbucks halfway between our neighborhoods. I got there early, sat facing the door, hands wrapped around a coffee I wasn't drinking. She walked in looking like any tired suburban mom, ponytail, hoodie, eyes with no idea what was coming. We sat. I told her who I was. Then I turned my phone and started showing her the photos of the journal pages. Her face went completely white. We sat there in that Starbucks while Melissa scrolled through the photos on my phone. You could see the moment it clicked. Dates, hotel mentions, Chase's name next to words no wife ever wants to read. She didn't cry right away. She did what people who work with crisis for a living do. She went still, quiet. Then she said something that changed everything. Rhett, I work in HR, same company, different office. I know exactly what to do with this. Turns out their company wasn't casual about workplace relationships, especially not between people who worked closely on the same high-visibility projects. Natalie and Chase were exactly the kind of scenario those policies were written for. Melissa didn't play games, she didn't threaten, she didn't warn them. She went straight to corporate HR, not the local office where politics could bury it. Filed a formal complaint, attached screenshots of the journal pages, timelines, and everything she could verify. A few days later, my attorney got the confirmation we were waiting for. The company had opened an internal investigation into Natalie and Chase. It was no longer just our marriage problem. Now it was their career problem too. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It never does. It comes in little shifts. First, I noticed Natalie was on her phone more than usual, checking email, frowning. She mentioned some HR thing going on, brushed it off like office drama. I kept my face neutral, asked the usual husband questions. Everything okay? Like I hadn't helped light the fuse. Then, one afternoon, she came home early. No laptop bag, no work smile, just this tight look around her mouth. They put me on administrative leave, she said, dropping her keys a little too hard on the counter. It's stupid. Some policy review. It'll blow over. I asked what happened. She told me just enough to protect her ego. HR questions, mentions of perception, and boundaries, a reminder about relationships between employees. What she didn't say, but I knew, was that they'd pulled her badge, cut her email, took her laptop, and told her not to come back until the investigation was done. I nodded, played the part. Yeah, corporate gets weird sometimes. I'm sure it'll pass. Inside, I knew better. She thought this was a storm she could talk her way out of. What she didn't know was that the clouds had been built out of her own words, and I was the one who'd handed them the forecast. Her job wasn't just a paycheck, it was an identity. Natalie was that woman in her industry, on panels, posting polished photos on LinkedIn, talking about leadership and ethics with a mic in her hand. Companies didn't just hire her to run events, they hired her face, her name, her so-called integrity. So while HR worked the inside, I went for the outside. I didn't spam emails, didn't make some ranting post. That's sloppy. Instead, I picked 3 people, just 3. People I knew were chronic in-the-loop types, event planners and consultants who treated gossip like currency. The kind of folks who say, I'm only telling you this because I trust you, right before they tell 10 more people. With each one, I did the same thing. Coffee. Calm tone. I'm telling you this in confidence. Then I laid out enough of the story and just enough proof that it couldn't be brushed off as rumor. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't have to. The truth was ugly enough. And just like that, the dominoes fell. Conference invites quietly disappeared. Panels were restructured. Her name got dropped from lineups she used to anchor. Her whole polished brand? It didn't explode. It crumbled. While her reputation was taking hits she couldn't see the source of, my attorney and I were watching the calendar. Timing mattered. By late April 2023, we had everything we needed lined up. The journal, page by page. The PI's timeline, backing up her own words. The forensic accountant's report showing the $47,000 she'd siphoned off into her side fund. Georgia still recognizes fault-based divorce. My lawyer wanted adultery and financial misconduct front and center. Not as background noise, as the legal foundation. So we filed. Clean, precise, no drama in the paperwork, just facts and exhibits. A few days later, she got served. At home. In the kitchen where we'd eaten 1,000 dinners. She stood there in leggings and a college hoodie, holding the envelope like it was something dirty. I can't believe you're doing this, she said. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to debate. In court, the judge didn't just see a hurt husband and a confused wife. He saw her handwriting, her dates, her transactions. The case was accepted on fault grounds. For the first time, officially, it wasn't our marriage fell apart. It was, she broke it. And here's the proof. Once the dust from filing settled a little, her lawyer tried a new angle. The journal isn't reliable, could be fiction, could be a draft, could even be fabricated. They had to try something. If that little black book stood, their whole defense collapsed. So my attorney brought in a forensic document examiner, not TV drama, real life. An older guy who'd spent decades in courtrooms looking at wills, contracts, forged signatures. He took samples of Natalie's handwriting from everywhere he legally could. Old cards, signed forms, employment documents. He studied the way her letters slanted, how hard she pressed the pen, the spacing between words, the little quirks you don't even know you have. Then he went through the journal, line by line, page by page. His report was simple and brutal. The journal was written by the same hand, same pressure, same habits, same patterns. In other words, this wasn't a creative writing experiment. This was her. Her attorney pushed back, questioned methods, tried to blur it. The judge listened, read the report, and then ruled. The journal was admissible evidence. From that point on, there was no maybe. It was her words, in her book, in front of the court. While the legal side tightened around her, the corporate side was moving too. In early June 2023, the investigation at her company wrapped up. There was no big public statement, no headline, no dramatic exit speech. Corporations don't do drama. They do paperwork. What she got was short and lethal. The investigation found clear violations of company policy regarding workplace relationships and professional conduct. Both Natalie and Chase were terminated, not reassigned, not asked to resign, not pursuing other opportunities, just done. Her email stayed dead, her access stayed cut. Her name disappeared from internal lists and event decks. 16 years of building a spotless image, gone in one controlled, quiet decision. She came home that day with a look I'd never seen on her face before. Not anger, not arrogance, just shock, and something close to fear. "They fired me," she said. "Me, like I'm disposable." I didn't say what I was thinking. She treated our marriage as disposable. Her company just returned the favor. And the crazy part? Her job was only the first thing she was going to lose. Losing her job should have been the peak. It wasn't. A few weeks after the terminations, something new hit. An anonymous post online. Someone, still don't know who, laid our whole mess out on Reddit. No real names, no company name, but just enough detail that anyone in our circles could connect the dots. Husband finds journal. Wife planning financial ambush. Husband goes scorched earth, tells the other spouse, triggers HR, wrecks careers. It blew up. Screenshots jumped to TikTok. People made storytime videos, hot takes, even some low-budget YouTube breakdowns. Comments split fast. Dude's a legend. Actions have consequences. This guy's a psycho. He ruined her life. Then came the part nobody prepares you for. Doxing. Someone dug a little too hard and found my real name, my firm, my city. It spread in smaller circles, industry subreddits, local gossip pages. A couple of clients quietly paused deals, said they didn't want the drama. Others sent short emails that basically said, "Off the record, I'd have done worse." I became content. A case study. Someone people argued about from behind screens, hero or villain depending on which clip you watched. And the people who actually knew us, they started picking sides too. When the internet turns you into a character, your real life goes weird fast. Mutual friends started reaching out. Some were blunt. "Man, you went too far. You didn't have to blow up her whole life." Others were worse, polite on the phone, then parroting her lines. "She was unhappy for years, you know that, right? You worked a lot. What did you expect?" Her family? They blamed me completely. In their version, she just made a mistake, and I responded like a lunatic with too much money and too many lawyers. I got a wall of angry texts about forgiveness, God's mercy, and you'll answer for this one day. At the same time, a few people quietly pulled me aside or sent late-night messages. "Between us, she did you dirty. I saw the way she talked about you. If half of what you're saying is true, you just survived a bullet." No public support, just private acknowledgments from people who didn't want to get dragged into the blast radius. So there I was. Online, I was either a monster or a martyr. Offline, I was a guy in his 50s sitting in a too-quiet house, watching people I'd known for years line up on either side of a line I hadn't drawn, but refused to step back from. I felt alone, but I also felt something else growing under that loneliness, a kind of hard, cold resolve. By the time we really got into court, it didn't feel like our marriage anymore. It felt like a long, ugly game of chess played in suits and bad lighting. Her lawyer's first big move was obvious: attack the journal. They argued it was private, fictional, taken out of context. They tried to frame it as a kind of emotional diary, not a plan. Then they pushed the privacy angle. He invaded her personal space, violated trust. My attorney didn't flinch. He laid it out piece by piece. The journal was found in a shared vehicle I regularly cleaned. No lock, no request to keep out, no do not touch. Under our state's laws, I had every right to access what was inside that car. Then he brought in the PI's timeline, dates and locations that matched her own entries almost word for word. After that, the forensic accountant's report. The missing $47,000 lined up against her side fund note. It stopped being emotional. It became math and handwriting and dates. Every argument they used hit a wall of facts. At some point you could see it in her lawyer's eyes. They were out of moves. Once the judge accepted the journal and the rest of the evidence, the tone shifted. We weren't talking about a standard no-fault split anymore. We were talking adultery and financial misconduct, in a state that still lets those words matter. For the first time since I found that journal, I felt something like leverage. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just leverage. My attorney laid out the terms. She'd have to return the $47,000 she siphoned off. No misunderstanding. No, I thought it was mine too. That money came back into the pot before anything was divided. Next came the assets. Our life, reduced to numbers and lines on paper. In a normal split, she'd be looking at close to half. Instead, with the fault grounds and the evidence stacked where it was, the scales moved. Hard. I kept the house. I kept my equity in the firm. She got her car, her personal belongings, and a small share of overall assets, somewhere around 15%. When she heard the final numbers, her face went blank. Not sad, not angry, just stunned. She'd spent 2 years planning how to walk away rich. In the end, she walked away with what the law required, and nothing she'd tried to steal. You'd think once the court stamped everything, it would calm down. It didn't. That anonymous Reddit post? It spawned a second wave. Some analysis accounts picked it up. People wrote long breakdowns. What I did right, what I did wrong, what they would have done as a real man. A podcast reached out, wanted me anonymously as a guest. I didn't go on, but they did an episode anyway. One host called me a legend for not letting myself get gutted. The other called me a psychopath with a bank account. My inbox turned into a circus. Some messages said, "You're my hero. My ex did the same thing." Others said, "Hope someone does to you what you did to her." A couple were darker. Stuff about knowing where I lived, wanting to teach me a lesson. Meanwhile, a few clients quietly pulled me aside. Off the record, you protected yourself. I respect that. So on one side, I had strangers online ready to crucify me. On the other, people who'd actually built things saying, you did what you had to do. The pressure was insane, but the only opinion that still felt unfinished was from the other spouse in this war. While my life was getting picked apart online, Melissa was doing her own kind of quiet damage control, except hers wasn't about image. It was about protecting her kids. Not long after the HR investigation wrapped, she filed for divorce from Chase. No big scene, no social media rant, just paperwork and resolve. When it was all said and done, she got primary custody. The kids stayed mostly with her. Chase got visitation, but everybody knew what happened. Word gets around in neighborhoods like ours, PTA circles, church, youth sports. His reputation tanked, not just as a husband, but as a man other men trusted. Jobs got harder to land. Every background check came with the silent weight of that story. The community rallied around her, not him. Moms checked in, dads offered to help with rides and repairs. People made sure she wasn't alone in the stands at games. Every once in a while, Melissa and I would exchange a short text. Nothing dramatic, just updates, usually about logistics or court timelines. Always respectful, always clear we weren't each other's next chapter. We were just two people whose lives got blown open by the same lie. And in her house, at least, justice had landed on the right side. While Melissa was slowly rebuilding, Natalie was doing the opposite. After the firing, she tried to land somewhere at the same level. Director roles, big brands, national conferences. On paper, she still looked impressive. But industries talk. Calls got lost. Promising interviews went quiet. A couple of companies dragged her through 3 rounds and then suddenly went in another direction. Eventually, she stopped aiming high. She moved out of our house and in with her younger sister in North Carolina. From a 6-figure, travel-heavy position to some small local event job paying maybe a quarter of what she used to make. No more big stages, no more panels, no more thought leadership posts with a ring light and a carefully crafted caption. The same people who used to tag her and brag about being on her guest list stopped saying her name at all. That's how you really know someone's done in that world. Nobody trashes you. They just erase you. She blamed me, of course. In her mind, none of this had anything to do with the 2 years she spent plotting. It was easier to believe I'd ruined her life than to admit she'd lit the match herself. And then, months later, she asked to see me. By December 2023, the legal part finally stopped bleeding. Our divorce was officially finalized. Sitting in that courtroom for the last time, listening to lawyers and a judge summarize 16 years of marriage in a few lines, felt strange, cold, almost clinical. But underneath it, there was this hard, quiet satisfaction. I hadn't let her run the play she wrote for me. On paper, it looked like this. I kept the house. I kept my equity in the firm and my business intact. She got her car, her personal stuff, and that thin slice of assets, far from the half she'd planned to take. Friends stayed split. Some never spoke to me again. Some never spoke to her again. A few tried to stay in the middle, pretending they didn't know the full story, even though the full story was sitting one subpoena away. But for me, a line had been drawn and signed. I wasn't the guy who got blindsided and bled out in court. I wasn't the clueless husband she'd scripted in her journal. I walked out of that last hearing tired, bruised, but still standing. I refused to be the victim. And just when I thought the story was over on paper, she texted and said, "We need to talk, in person." I'm not going to pretend I walked out of this untouched. Yeah, I kept the house, the business, the money. But there's stuff you don't see on paper. When the story was peaking online, a few deals went cold. Clients who loved me suddenly needed more time to think. A couple flat out said they didn't want to be tied to that drama guy from the internet. My name got dragged in circles I wasn't even in. Whispers at industry events. DMs I never answered. I'd lie in bed at 2 a.m. scrolling comments from strangers who thought they knew what kind of man I was. Sleep went to hell. I'd wake up at every noise, check locks twice, mind running through every worst-case scenario. You can only live like that so long before something breaks. So I did the only thing I could control. I rebuilt myself from the edges in, started hitting the gym again. Long, ugly runs where I could feel the anger bleed out mile by mile. Ate cleaner, cut back on booze, kept a schedule, kept repeating one thing in my head. My name matters. If I was going to be remembered for this, it'd be on my terms, not from some comment thread written by people who'd never built or lost a damn thing. Slowly, the fog lifted. I didn't forget, but I stopped drowning in it. By June 2024, the noise had finally started to fade. The internet had moved on to a new villain. Work was steady again. My house was quiet in a way I'd learned to live with. Then my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Natalie. Text. We need to talk. In person. I stared at it for a long minute. Part of me wanted to block the number and let the past stay buried. Another part of me knew this conversation was coming eventually, one way or another. I agreed, but on my terms. Not our old house, not some public place where she could spin a story later. I told her to meet me at my brother's place. Neutral ground. Someone else in the next room. No chance of he yelled or he scared me getting turned into some new narrative. We ended up sitting at his wooden kitchen table, just the two of us. Overhead light humming soft, late afternoon sun slipping through the blinds. She kept her eyes on her hands, fingers twisting together, knuckles white. The woman who used to command ballrooms and boardrooms suddenly couldn't hold my gaze. I sat back, calm, no raised voice, no shaking, just waiting. The air between us felt heavy, like the second before a storm finally breaks. She took a breath, looked up at me and said, "Do you have any idea what you've done to my life?" She didn't ease into it. "You destroyed my life," she said. "You know that, right? You blew it up." I let her talk. She needed to unload it. "You didn't just leave, Rhett. You humiliated me. An affair is personal. It's between two people. What you did was public. You dragged my name through work, through the courts, through the internet. You turned me into a joke." I just watched her. No sarcasm, no comeback, just silence. She kept going. "I lost my job, my career, my friends. I can't walk into a room without wondering who knows. You did that. Over what? Over some journal?" I could feel that part of me that used to flinch, wanting to defend, to argue, to explain. I didn't feed it. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and set it on the table between us. One tap, photo gallery, folder, journal. I scrolled to the first page, turned the screen toward her, and pushed the phone slowly across the wood. "Before we talk about humiliation," I said quietly, "let's remember how this really started." She stared at the screen for a second, like it might burn her if she touched it. Then she picked up the phone. Her eyes moved across the first page. I didn't have to look. I knew it by heart. "He suspects nothing." Her jaw clenched. She swiped. "If I play this right, I'll be free and set for life in a year or less." Another swipe. "Chase is a bridge out of this marriage. Good enough for now." You could see each line hit her. Not like new information, she wrote them, but like seeing a crime scene photo of something you did and thought you'd buried. Her eyes started to shine. She blinked hard, then failed to stop the first tear. It slid down fast, hit her hand, stayed there. I didn't raise my voice, didn't lean in. I just let the silence do the talking. She finally whispered, "I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve all of this." I shook my head once. "No," I said, steady. "Cheating might have been a mistake. This..." I nodded at the phone, at her own handwriting. "This wasn't personal. It was strategic." She kept staring at the phone, at her own words, like they belonged to somebody else. I let a few seconds stretch, then finally said, "You spent 2 years planning this, Nat." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I spent 5 weeks responding to it," I went on. "There's a difference between plotting and reacting." I wasn't angry. I was done with angry. My voice was flat. "You wrote out how to bleed me dry. You wrote out how to spin me as the cold, checked-out husband while you walked away set for life. You weren't cornered. You weren't desperate. You were calculating." She shook her head, tears running now. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I said, in black ink. I leaned back. "You want to know the real difference between us? You tried to make me the victim in your story. I refused. I let that sit. If that makes me the villain, fine. I went cold. I fought back. And yeah, actions have consequences. Yours did. Mine do." I wasn't asking for her agreement. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I was just naming what I'd already chosen. If the choice is victim or villain, I'll take villain. Eventually, there was nothing left to say. The words were spent. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, still looking at the table instead of me. There was this heavy, tired silence between us, two people who'd run out of excuses and ammunition at the same time. I slid the phone back to my side, pocketed it, and pushed my chair back. "I'm not here to hurt you more," I said. "I'm here so this conversation doesn't live in my head as something unfinished." She didn't answer. Maybe she couldn't. I stood up first. Didn't reach for her. Didn't offer a hug. There are some chapters you don't close with a gesture. You close them by finally walking out of the scene you should have left a long time ago. I left my brother's house without looking back. No dramatic door slam. Just a man putting one foot in front of the other. That night, for the first time in a long time, I actually slept. Not perfectly, not peacefully, but without that constant replay. I realized something lying there in the dark. At a certain point, mercy becomes a luxury you can't afford. Not for them, for yourself. And in my head, for the first time, that door finally locked. The year after that conversation wasn't some movie-style rebirth. It was slow, ordinary, but solid. Work came back first. The noise online faded, like it always does. People moved on to the next scandal. Deals that had stalled started thawing. A couple of clients who'd kept their distance circled back, no apology, just, "We'd like to revisit that project." I noticed something, though. The ones who stayed, or came back, were the ones who understood what it means to protect what you've built. They didn't see me as unhinged. They saw a man who refused to roll over. Quietly, the respect got deeper. I started dating a little, nothing serious. Coffee here, dinner there. I was honest, divorced, messy story, not looking to rush into anything. Some women bailed, some didn't. I didn't chase either way. My days got simple. Work, gym, cooking for one, sometimes a beer on the back porch watching the sun drop over a yard I'd fought hard to keep. Not exciting, but steady. I'd lost a marriage, but I kept my livelihood. More than that, I kept my dignity. And for a man my age, that's worth more than any crowd's approval. Every now and then, I'd hear about Natalie through the grapevine. I didn't ask, but information has a way of finding you. She was still in North Carolina, still living with her sister, still working small-time local events, weddings, community stuff, the kind of gigs she'd have turned her nose up at 5 years ago. The big brand logos were gone. The conference stages were someone else's now. Her old network didn't trash her. They just stopped answering her calls. That's how it goes in those circles. No open condemnation, just closed doors. Every few months I'd get a text, some version of, "This all went too far. You didn't have to destroy everything. If you'd handled it differently, we both could have walked away okay." Always the same theme. "This is your fault, Rhett." I'd read them once, then put the phone down. No reply. Because here's the truth I finally made peace with. As long as I keep engaging, there's still a thread between us. An emotional tether she can tug on whenever her life feels too heavy. Cutting that thread wasn't cruel. It was survival. I didn't talk to Chase after everything blew up. We weren't friends before, and after what I read in that journal, I sure as hell wasn't going to start. But bits of his life drifted back to me anyway. That's how suburbs work. Word just travels. Melissa stayed in the company, in HR, and she didn't just survive. She moved up, got promoted, became the person people trusted when something ugly hit their team. Funny how that works. The woman who got blindsided became the one making sure other people didn't. Chase? He landed other jobs, but nothing stuck the way his old one did. Reputation follows you, especially now. Eventually I heard he'd remarried. Fast. New photos, new smiles, same face. The kids stayed mostly with Melissa. You'd see them with her at games, at school stuff, their dad showing up sometimes on weekends, trying to be fun in smaller doses. Those are the quiet, long-term consequences nobody puts in a Reddit post. I don't sit around thinking about him. But when his name comes up, there's only one sentence that ever runs through my mind. He made his choices, and life answered them. If there's anything I want men, especially guys my age, to hear from this, it's simple. A man's got limits. I'm not saying go nuclear every time someone hurts you. I'm saying don't hand your life over and call it being the bigger person, while someone else scripts you as the fool. Don't be the guy who closes his eyes because the truth is uncomfortable. Don't be the man who lets someone write a whole story where he's the clueless, disposable character and then just plays along. Your name matters. Your reputation matters. The work you put in for decades, that matters too. There's a line between grace and self-betrayal, between patience and letting yourself be used. And when that line gets crossed, you don't owe anyone your silence. When I found that journal, I had a choice. Roll over and let her cash out on my life, or stand up and protect what I'd built. People call it revenge. I call it refusing to be walked on. At the end of the day, I can live with a lot of labels, but I refuse to be the sucker. Somewhere along the way, people online turned my life into a poll. Is he the victim or the villain? Like those were the only two boxes that existed. Here's how I see it now. The victim takes the high road no matter what. Smiles through the hit. lets the lawyer handle it, walks out with half his work gone, his name bent, telling himself he did the noble thing while the person who gutted him lands on their feet. The villain? He fights back. He thinks 3 moves ahead. He refuses to play the role someone else wrote for him. I picked door number 2. People throw the word vindictive at me like it's a checkmate. Maybe I am. That doesn't automatically make me wrong. You don't write out a 2-year plan to financially cripple your husband and then cry foul because he didn't just hand you the knife. Once trust is gone, it's gone. There's no nice way to say that. No sermon, no therapy session, no Hallmark quote fixes it. So yeah, if the choice is between being the victim or the villain in somebody else's story, I'll take the villain who stood his ground. I get the same questions over and over. Did you go too far? Maybe. Depends on where you're standing. If you've never had someone quietly aim your own life back at your head, it probably looks extreme. Do you regret it? No, not for a second. I regret marrying someone capable of what she did. I don't regret refusing to let her cash out on it. Would you ever forgive her? No, not because of the affair. Affairs can sometimes be worked through, but because it wasn't a slip. It was calculated. She turned our marriage into a spreadsheet and tried to optimize my ruin. There's no coming back from that. If you had to do it all again, would you? Yeah, I would. Maybe cleaner, maybe quieter. But the core? Protecting my livelihood, my name, my future? I'd make that call every time. Say what you want about me. Hero, villain, monster, cautionary tale. At the end of the day, I'm not the one who got erased. I'm still standing, so that's the whole thing. It started with a journal I was never meant to see, turned into a strategy she'd been building for 2 years, how to gut me financially, rewrite history, and walk away set for life while I played the fool. I didn't let that happen. I brought in a lawyer, a PI, a forensic accountant. I told the other spouse. I let the truth hit her career, her image, her plans. She lost her job, her standing, the future she thought she'd cash out on. Was it harsh? Yeah. But betrayal like that doesn't come from impulse. It's a blueprint for destruction. It cuts deep, straight to the foundation of everything you've built. And every cut leaves a cost. Here's what I know now. Mercy isn't mandatory. Respect sometimes looks like protecting yourself, not turning the other cheek. Men don't shatter from this stuff. Men harden. They don't break. You can call me a monster, a legend, or just a guy who refused to lay down. Villain or not, I protected what was mine. Now it's your turn. Was I justified, or did I go too far? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more real stories like this, hit follow and stick around.